Hello everyone, happy Halloween, and welcome back to the Search for the Worst Cartoon, a series where I try to find the worst cartoon ever made because trust me, it's not Teen Titans Go. I want to imagine that ever since I decided to bring back the Search for the Worst Cartoon, this was a video that a lot of y'all had been wanting to see me make, and well, it's finally here. I feel like this video couldn't have come at a more perfect time. In addition to this being uploaded on Halloween Day, I've also had a really awful streak on the Search for the Worst Cartoons so far. We've just been looking at a lot of garbage on this series, genuine bottom of the barrel animation, and with all of this in mind, especially after looking at the worst cartoon ever made, literally in the previous episode, I was kind of prepared for this. I wasn't dreading looking at Velma. So I sat down and I watched it. I watched Velma. And, how do I put this? This might be a bit different from how you would expect this video to be. Now hear me out. I know that, by saying that, people are gonna make, ideas of what this will be, and I just want to show you something. Velma is not a good show. Not at all. I am not saying that Velma is good. I love being a contrarian, but, I got standards, okay? I know that, now would be crossing the line. But honestly, after sitting through the Red Ape Family, after sitting through the Prince, after sitting through the Slim Shady Show, the f***ing Slim Shady Show, I am not joking when I say this. Velma is actually one of the better cartoons I've looked at so far. I'm not joking when I say this. This isn't like me being a contrarian or anything like that. I'm being dead serious. I want to imagine that if I hadn't watched like any of these three shows before Velma, I probably would have hated Velma more, but it's just the sheer lack of quality of these three shows just made me kind of, not hate Velma that much. I feel like watching Velma and making a video on it long after the backlash surrounding it had died down could have helped with this, but I don't know. Again, listen, I am not saying that Velma is good. I am not saying that at all, but, it's not 1.6 out of 10 levels of bad. Like f***ing Slim Shady Show somehow has a higher rating than this. That's just, how do you do that, man? How do you explain that? This is not a video of me defending Velma and being like, oh, it's actually good, guys. We're all just overreacting. But, it's not the worst thing ever made. Even when I went into this, even before I started watching it, I just knew that, no matter how bad it was not going to be, the worst cartoon. The bottom of the barrel. There was no way this would have been worse than the Slim Shady Show. So let's dive in a bit onto Velma and how I somehow don't hate it as much as I probably should. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing as it would be greatly appreciated. With that said, let us dive in. I'm gonna say this right now. I actually like the idea of a Scooby-Doo cartoon that's radically different from all other versions of Scooby-Doo. That is not a bad thing. Velma being completely different from all other depictions of Scooby-Doo, that is not a bad thing. In fact, that should be considered a positive. That is something that should be encouraged, given how notoriously formulaic Scooby-Doo is. This isn't me saying, I hate Scooby-Doo or that Scooby-Doo is bad or whatever, but, you cannot deny, regardless of if you love Scooby-Doo, that, you cannot deny that it is f***ing formulaic. Almost every iteration is exactly the same thing. It follows the exact same plot structure. You watch one episode of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? You've basically watched every episode of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? As well as every episode of What's New Scooby-Doo, as well as every episode of A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, as well as every episode of Be Cool Scooby-Doo, as well as every episode of Scooby-Doo and Guess Who, as well as the 2 live-action Scooby-Doo movies, as well as the many, many direct-to-video Scooby-Doo movies. It's a mystery, no pun intended, how Scooby-Doo became one of the most famous cartoons of all time, given how repetitive and formulaic it is. Seriously. I mean, obviously, yeah, there are exceptions to this. You have stuff like Zombie Island and Mystery Incorporated that try and add a darker tone to Scooby-Doo, but for the most part, every iteration, exact same thing. no differences at all. So Velma wanting to do something radically different with the Scooby-Doo characters, that is not a bad thing. The problem just comes with the execution. And you know what? Making it an adult cartoon, that's not a bad thing either on paper. Taking a kid's cartoon and turning it into an adult cartoon, that could work. Especially like something like Scooby-Doo. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I feel like an adult-oriented black comedy about Scooby-Doo, like that could work. That could genuinely work. It's just not well executed. That's the problem. There are ideas in this show that I think could actually work. There are ideas here. Like, I actually see a good cartoon in this. I don't think I've ever said that about any of the previous cartoons here. I think, like, maybe Alan Gregory, but, like, that's it. None of the other cartoons I could, like, ever envision, like, actually being good. I've heard people theorize that this was originally going to be like something completely unrelated to Scooby-Doo. Like there was going to be no Scooby-Doo characters in it at all. But then Warner Bros, HBO, whatever, rejected the pitch. And so they went and like edited it slightly to be Scooby-Doo related. And then that was what got the project greenlit. But I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't think it works like that. I don't think, you know, pitching shows and whatever, like, I don't think it works like that. I know David, what's his face, is like, you know, bad and whatever, but like, I doubt that he's that much of an idiot. I'm sorry. While we're at it, I just want to say as well, I really like the art direction for this show. This is easily the best cartoon I've looked at in terms of art style and animation. I actually really like the art style that this show has. I don't even mind like the character changes, like, you know, making Shaggy black, making Daphne Asian, making Velma Indian. Like, okay, that's fine. Like, I don't got a problem with that at all. I know people are going to be screaming, like, oh, they made it woke and whatever, but, like, you know, like, whatever, man. Like, if you genuinely get angry about, like, they made Shaggy black, it's like, there's no way someone cares about Scooby-Doo that much that they can get mad at this because they changed the races of the characters, you know? There are reasons to not like Velma, but the race swapping is not one of them. The fact that this has a really good art style honestly just makes me kind of sad as well, because there's clearly talent behind the animators and the artists behind the show. It's like, they could have easily given this that pseudo Family Guy art style that a lot of other bad adult cartoons have, but they didn't. They actually gave it a visually appealing, really good art style, and it just sucks that it's like wasted on this. I'm gonna assume as well that part of the reason why I don't hate this as much as I should is because this is a really infamous cartoon that literally everyone has already talked about. For the most part on the search for the worst cartoon, I just look at really obscure, you know, cartoons that like nobody else would ever talk about. Like, I think like Alan Gregory is the only other infamous cartoon that I've looked at on this series, and even then it's not like super infamous. It's just like a somewhat well-known bad cartoon, and that's it. Most of the time I just look at really, like, you know, stuff that like nobody else has ever heard of, and I honestly prefer doing that because not only I get like it's more interesting to me. That's why it's more interesting to me to talk about this stuff. Like, I could make videos talking about like how Teen Titans Go is bad, how Ren and Stimpy's adult party cartoon is bad, but like I don't want to do that. You know, like, where is the fun in doing that? Where is the fun in talking about, you know, bad cartoons that millions and millions of other people have already talked about, you know? I'd rather dig deeper. I'd rather review weird, obscure shit that you will never see any other cartoon YouTuber talk about, because it's more fun. It's more interesting to me. If I ever made a search for the worst cartoon on Teen Titans Go, it's like, what could I say about Teen Titans Go that literally nobody else has already said about it? Oh no, I can't believe they ruined this show that I didn't grow up watching as a kid, and I quite frankly couldn't care less about it. How could they do such a thing? Have they no shame? I'm gonna go ahead and get angry at this episode that I'm pretty sure is like 10 years old and has already been hated on by literally everyone else. I can't believe that. Yeah, that. Let me talk about this obscure Better Call Saul cartoon that you didn't know existed. That's way more interesting to me. It is much easier for me to review the Lil Sam and Cat show or the Slim Shady show compared to Velma, because like nobody's ever heard of Lil Sam and Cat or Slim Shady show, whereas like everyone's already talked about Velma. So it's like, what is there for me to say about it that's new? I will say that a lot of the humor doesn't land, a lot of the edgy humor just fails, but like I don't know what it is. I think I've grown some kind of like, I think I'm desensitized to it. I think I have some sort of immunity from it. After having to sit through stuff like Red Ape Family, it's just kind of like it does nothing to me. Like, I'm not angry when I watch this show somehow. I don't get angry. Again, I cannot stress this enough. I don't think Velma is good. I'm not going there, okay? I love being a contrarian, but that's crossing the line, okay? I just don't think it's like the worst cartoon I've looked at on this series. It's bad, but it's not like the worst, okay? I'm honestly kind of disappointed with this show. I really thought it was going to be like as bad as people made it out to be, and although yes, it is not a good show, it's also not like the worst thing I've ever seen. I think the problem is that I have a stronger tolerance for like dark humor when compared to other people. I could very easily see how like the humor of the show can like anger people, but for me, it does nothing. Like, I don't get angry when I watch this show. I acknowledge that it's not like a funny show or anything like that. I'm not defending the humor for this show, but it doesn't make me angry to watch this show. Combine that with the fact that like there's almost no material for me to work with when it comes to talking about this show, because literally everyone has already talked about this show. What is there for me to say about it that nobody else has already said? There's more stuff for me to talk about regarding the hate surrounding the show compared to the show itself. I feel like it says something that the only new things I could say about Velma, the only original things I could say about it are like positives, redeeming qualities. You know, the fact that this is a different Scooby-Doo cartoon instead of being the same old song and dance, the same formulaic crap that we've been watching for like over 50 years. You know, the animation is good, the art style is good, you know, like positive stuff. That's the only new things I could say about the show. And I have to wonder, what would the reception for this show be if it wasn't Scooby-Doo related? I'm willing to bet that if this show had nothing to do with Scooby-Doo, it would have a significantly less bad reputation. It would probably still be considered a bad show, but it would have nowhere near as bad of a reputation. Barely anyone would care about it. It wouldn't have the infamous reputation that it has. This doesn't even like ruin Scooby-Doo for me or anything like that. Like, I could still watch Scooby-Doo. I could watch like any of the shows, any of the movies, whatever, and like I could still like enjoy them. The last thing that would be on my mind is this. This has almost nothing to do with Scooby-Doo, so it's not like it can ruin Scooby-Doo for me at all. You know, it's like with Slip and Jimmy, where it's just like, it has barely anything to do with Better Call Saul, so it's not like, oh, it ruins Better Call Saul for me. Like, this is the exact same thing. The only other new thing that I could bring up about this show is my personal take on the whole hate-watching debate surrounding the show. Now, for those who don't know, hate watching is when someone watches a show or a movie and they know that it'll be bad. They know that it'll be garbage, and yet they decide to watch it anyways. When Velma was airing, there was this debate going on regarding hate watching the show, because people were worried that if people watched the show just to see how bad it was, then that would cause like the views of the show, the ratings to go up, and that would cause like the people behind HBO Max and whatever to think that the show is doing successfully, even if it has gotten like really negative reviews. That doesn't matter. The ratings matter more than the reviews. And lo and behold, a second season was announced for the show earlier this year. People are blaming those that hate watch the show as being responsible for this getting a second season, but at the same time, I kind of feel like not really. I feel like hate watching isn't really like the main reason why Velma's getting a second season, because hear me out. It's all because of another really hated HBO Max show that came out this year, The Idol. Velma and The Idol are very similar in that they're both HBO Max shows from 2023 that have gotten very awful reviews from critics and audiences alike. The only difference is that Velma got renewed for a second season, while The Idol got cancelled after only one season that consisted of 5 episodes. I want to imagine that when episodes of The Idol were coming out, people were just making videos talking about how bad the show was. There's tons of videos that were made on how like the show is garbage. So I want to imagine it was largely hate watched as well, similar to Velma. So if Velma got a season 2 because of people hate watching it, then surely the same thing should have happened with The Idol, but it didn't. The Idol got cancelled. So it just doesn't make any sense to me at all. I've seen some people claim that a second season for Velma was planned from the very beginning. I have no idea. I cannot confirm that at all. That's just going off of what I've heard, and it's just complete speculation. Whatever the case may be, though, I don't think Velma got a season 2 because of people hate watching it. Because if that was the case, then the same thing should have happened with The Idol, but it didn't. And I want to say as well, unlike Velma, The Idol is genuinely f***ing awful. Like, it is actually as bad as people made it out to be. My god. Oh yeah, and just in case, I didn't watch either show on HBO Max. I don't have HBO Max. Yo ho ho, arg me mateys, if you know what I mean. That's the way to go when it comes to watching these shows. I'm probably gonna get a lot of backlash for this, but I don't hate Velma that much. And there's just a lot of factors that contribute to this decision. The fact that like everyone and their grandma has already made like a video talking about why it's bad, and so it's less like there's nothing new for me to say about it. And then in addition to that, you also have a lot of the recent cartoons I've looked at that are like infinitely worse than Velma, like the Red Ape Family and whatever, the Slim Shady Show. It's just, I don't hate Velma that much. It is not a good show, but there are way worse cartoons out there, okay? I would much rather watch Velma than, like, The Prince, okay? I don't even care. The Prince is also an HBO Max cartoon, and it is... I have no idea how The Prince didn't receive, like, a fraction of the backlash that Velma received. Like, The Prince is, like, way worse than Velma. There is no way anyone could think Velma is worse. I'm sorry. I would rather watch Velma over The Prince. I don't care what people say. I don't care if people get mad at me for saying that. So yeah, that's about it. I know that I didn't once go into any detail on the show itself, but there's a 99% chance that you've already watched a video of someone explaining like why it's a bad show. So like, what is there for me to say about it? Nothing. If you're out of the loop regarding the controversy surrounding Velma, and this is like your first video to like see like what the deal is with this show and why it's so hated, then yeah, I apologize for it being a pretty poor explanation as to why the show is bad, but I just gotta be honest with y'all. This was just a really hard cartoon for me to review, but that's just because there is nothing to say about it, because everyone has done so many things on it. Everyone has said so many things about this show. So yeah, everyone, that's about it. If you somehow enjoyed this video despite how lackluster it was, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing, as it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching this video. I hope you all have a happy Halloween, and I will see you all next time. Adios.